The night 3i Atlas changed direction, the system didn't glitch. I know what a glitch looks like, this wasn't it. I remember the exact second it happened. I was sitting alone in the observation room, the kind of silence that makes your heartbeat sound louder than it should. Half the team had already gone home, the rest were buried in calibration reports. It was one of those shifts when nothing ever happens, until it suddenly does. The comet's data stream updated across the monitors in a soft blue glow, smooth and steady like it always does. Then the trajectory line bent. Not dramatically, just a subtle curve, maybe a fraction of a degree. But comets don't adjust themselves like that. Not cleanly. Not instantly. Before I could even react, one of the radar channels blinked out. A 1-second blackout. It came back on as if nothing had happened, except now 3 minutes of the log were gone. Just erased. Not corrupted. Not moved. When I checked the numerical index, the timestamp simply skipped forward like those 3 minutes never existed. No one has explained that yet. I tried reopening the raw feed, but the access key I've used for years suddenly didn't work. When I requested temporary clearance from the system, it flagged my attempt as restricted, a label we've only seen used a handful of times, usually when the military is poking around. I called over one of the night techs. He looked at the display for a few seconds, went pale, and said, "Don't get involved." Then he left the room without another word. He didn't come back that night. Some say he quit the next morning. Others say someone asked him to step away. While all of this was happening, the comet kept drifting through the black like it owned the place. 3i Atlas wasn't bright in the dramatic sky on fire sense. Its glow was colder, sharper, like a blade catching moonlight. And the tail, longer than predicted, cleaner than the model suggested, had this faint ripple in it. I didn't notice it at first, but the cameras did. Frame by frame, the ripple moved as if following a rhythm. Some astronomers say it's nothing more than uneven gas outflow. But there's a theory, whispered, not published, that the pattern looks too regular. Too steady. Like something is controlling it. Guiding it. Later that night, I stepped outside to get some air. The sky was annoyingly perfect, not a cloud anywhere, as if the world had decided to pull back the curtain for a better view. When I looked up, I could see 3i Atlas as a faint smear just above the horizon. Not bright enough for casual observers, but visible enough to make my chest tighten. Something about it felt, beware. That's the only way I can describe it. Inside, the anomalies kept piling up. A junior analyst whispered to me that 2 data packets were diverted through a private relay before being archived. That's never happened before, he said. Someone's monitoring this directly. A few amateur astronomers online mentioned that public satellite images briefly showed a dark, perfectly circular shadow near the comet's trajectory, a shadow that disappeared minutes later when the images were updated for clarity. The replacement photos looked cleaner than any of the satellite's previous output. Too clean. Some people think they were AI-generated replacements. Others believe the original images caught something they weren't supposed to. And then there was the phone call. My shift was nearly over when the landline, the one nobody uses anymore, rang. I hesitated before picking it up. The voice on the other end was low, almost mechanical. "You're looking too close," it said. I froze. "Who is this?" Click. The call disconnected. I checked the call log. No number. No timestamp. Almost like the phone hadn't rung at all. After that, I tried to focus on my work, but the feeling wouldn't leave me. The sense that someone, or something, didn't want anyone watching too carefully. And the strangest part? The comet seemed brighter after the call. Not dramatically, just a small increase in luminosity. Enough for the automated sensors to ping. Enough to make the night techs glance at each other in that quiet way people do when they're too nervous to ask questions. There's a growing belief in certain circles online, the kind of people who track anomalies for fun, that 3i Atlas might not be a natural comet. Some say the reflections on its surface look segmented, like panels. Others claim it emits narrowband frequencies during rotation. One post even suggested the nucleus has a repeating symmetry to it. Most of these theories get taken down within hours. The official explanation? Exaggerated speculation. The unofficial truth? No one's giving a real reason. The night ended with one more strange thing, a faint hum recorded by one of the passive antennas. It lasted for seconds, then vanished. When I checked the file the next morning, the recording had been replaced with a blank placeholder titled calibration_01. WAV. Calibration. At 3:14 a.m. Sure. Look, I'm not saying 3i Atlas is anything more than a rogue interstellar visitor. Maybe it's just a weird chunk of rock and ice behaving in ways we don't fully understand. But the missing data, the locked files, the restricted access, the calls, and the way the comet seems to move almost intentionally. Whether that's all just coincidence, well, that's for you to decide. I didn't plan on getting pulled deeper into this mess, but that's how these things go. You see one anomaly, then another, and suddenly you're the guy everyone avoids because you asked the wrong questions at the wrong time. 3 days after the incident with the missing logs, I came in early to check if the system still showed that curved trajectory. It did. In fact, the curve had grown more pronounced. Not by much, maybe 0.5%, but enough that the automated prediction model threw a warning. It flashed on the screen for less than a second before disappearing. I caught only a glimpse of the message. Unusual deviation. Manual review required. But when I opened the file where those warnings get stored, there was nothing there. Just clean, empty rows. As if no warning had ever popped up. I asked one of the data engineers about it, and he said something that made my stomach drop. Our logs haven't synced for 40 minutes. The server's locked. Locked? Servers don't lock themselves. He shrugged, like he already regretted telling me. Just wait for the update, he said. They're doing something. But that's the thing, no one told us anything. No memo, no alert, nothing. Around noon, a representative from an external partner showed up. That's all his badge said, external partner. He walked straight to the upper office, didn't smile, didn't look around, didn't introduce himself. 2 supervisors followed him inside. The meeting lasted 15 minutes. When they came out, both supervisors looked pale. By evening, half of our access permissions had changed. I wasn't the only one who noticed. A couple of the older researchers whispered about the last time something like this happened, but they clammed up when I asked for details. One of them, a woman who's been studying comets for 30 years, told me quietly. Be careful which questions you ask. 3i Atlas is sensitive. Sensitive? A comet? Later that night, while I was running a manual scan, I saw something new. The comet's brightness wasn't constant. It flickered in intervals, sharp, clean pulses. They weren't random. The timings repeated. When I graphed them, they formed a pattern that looked eerily organized. I sent the graph to a friend at another observatory. 5 minutes later, he replied. Delete this. Seriously. Before I could respond, he unsent the message. Some say the pulses are caused by jets of gas bursting from beneath the surface. Others claim it's just a processing artifact. But an amateur in Finland posted a video showing the same flicker, recorded from his backyard telescope. His video went viral. People were debating possible explanations. 2 hours later, the video was removed. His whole account disappeared. No explanation. Meanwhile, the comet kept getting brighter. Not uniformly, more like it was glowing from inside. I know how ridiculous that sounds, but the spectral readings showed a narrow wavelength spike. One that didn't match any known natural emission. I tried checking the raw spectral images. 4 were scrambled. 2 were completely missing. 1 was still intact, but when I zoomed in, I saw thin, parallel structures on the comet's illuminated side. They almost looked like ridges. Evenly spaced. Too evenly spaced. I thought maybe the camera had glitched, so I checked another telescope. Same ridges. Same spacing. And then I got another call. This time, it wasn't a voice. It was static, or something like static. Beneath the noise, I could swear I heard a tone. A steady hum fading in and out. When I said hello, the sound cut off instantly. 15 seconds later, all three of the screens I'd been working on froze. A red banner flashed across the system. Unauthorized activity detected. Logging access. But I wasn't doing anything unauthorized. Or maybe I was, according to someone else's definition. I tried reaching out to the amateur astronomy community again, but people were getting jumpy. Posts about 3i Atlas vanished quickly. Threads got locked. Someone even claimed their IP was temporarily banned from a public research database after searching for 3i Atlas trajectory deviations. There's a phrase spreading quietly around certain circles. The comet is listening. Ridiculous, I know. But here's the strange thing, every time the comet flickers, something on Earth seems to react. A radar ping here. A blackout there. A data freeze somewhere else. Too many coincidences strung too close together. The night after the tone incident, I saw 3i Atlas again from the observation deck. It was brighter, noticeably brighter. A clean white glow, almost too steady for a natural object. I stared at it for a long time, and for a moment, I had the strangest feeling, like it wasn't just drifting. It was approaching. I checked the updated trajectory model the next morning. The predicted path had shifted again, just slightly, but enough that the program recalculated potential close approaches. And that's when I saw the part that made my hand shake. The model had been edited. Not updated. Edited. Someone manually altered the numbers. And whoever did it tried to cover their tracks, but not well enough. A name field had been wiped clean, but the timestamp remained. The edit happened at 3:14 a.m. The exact time of the mysterious tone. Coincidence? Maybe. But after everything I've seen so far, I'm starting to doubt coincidences entirely. Whatever 3i Atlas is, it's not behaving like a comet. Not like any comet I've ever studied. Some researchers believe it's hollow. Some think it's emitting signals. Some claim it's reacting to things we do. And a few, the ones who speak only off the record, think it might not be a comet at all. Whether they're right or not, well, that's up to you. I didn't expect the sound to return. Honestly, I'd convinced myself I imagined it, that long shifts, bad sleep, and too much caffeine had blurred the line between real data and wishful paranoia. But 2 nights after the trajectory edit, the antennas picked up something again. Not static. Not random bursts. A tone. Soft. Low. Too clean to be noise. I was alone when it happened, again. Everyone else had stepped out for the nightly systems check, leaving me with a silent room full of blinking consoles. The hum came through the auxiliary channel, the one that shouldn't receive anything unless manually tuned. Except no one touched it. The tone lasted 6 seconds. It pulsed twice, slow, deliberate pulses, then faded like someone gently turning down a volume knob. When I opened the diagnostics window, I saw a tiny spike in the waveform chart. Almost perfect symmetry. But the recording didn't save. The system created a file, yes, but the file was empty. 0 kilobytes. Something, or someone, wiped it the moment it was generated. When the others came back, the tone was gone, the channel was normal, and I was left sitting there feeling like I'd just witnessed something I wasn't supposed to witness. I didn't mention the tone to anyone. Not right away. I needed time to make sense of it. Instead, I dug into the telemetry backlog. That's when I found something worse. In the past 24 hours, 7 separate readings had been flagged as physically inconsistent. Normally, that means the sensors tripped. Overheated. Misread a reflection. But all 7 flags were tied to the same timestamp the moment the tone appeared. And that's not how sensor errors behave. Not 7 different systems. Not simultaneously. I printed the logs and tucked them into my bag. I don't know why, maybe instinct, maybe paranoia, but something told me not to leave them in the network. Later that morning, an email went out from upper management. Short. Terse. Completely out of nowhere. All staff are reminded that unusual readings related to current observational targets should be reported through proper channels only. Unauthorized analysis is not permitted. Unauthorized analysis? We'd never had a policy like that before. A few of us exchanged confused glances. One of the night analysts muttered, "Someone upstairs is spooked." Another whispered that a team from a federal agency had been on site the previous night, accessing the off-network machines, the ones we never use unless dealing with sensitive material. And then the rumors started. Someone said they saw 2 supervisors arguing behind a closed door. Another swore one of the external consultants had removed a hard drive from the lab. Someone else claimed one of our servers was physically disconnected for private review. The entire building felt tense, like the air right before a storm. Meanwhile, the comet, if we can even keep calling it that, kept approaching. Slowly, but definitely shifting. Not much, but enough. Amateur astronomers noticed, too. There were posts on forums about small non-gravitational accelerations. Those posts didn't stay up long. Some said the deletion waves were automated moderation. Some said certain keywords were being monitored. Some said the platforms were pressured to quiet down the conversation. I don't have proof. I'm just telling you what people were saying. But one thing I do know is real: the tail of 3I Atlas began to change shape. At first, a slight tightening. Then a narrowing. Then a strange kink in the trailing arc, like the tail was folding inward. Natural tails don't fold. They disperse. I tried adjusting the wavelength filter, thinking it was a processing error. But the kink remained. Even in RAW mode. Even in the infrared. When I enhanced the image, I saw faint striations, long, thin lines running parallel along the tail. Not chaotic dust streaks. Lines. Organized. Structured. I sent the enhanced image to one of our senior researchers, someone who's been studying comet morphology longer than I've been alive. She didn't respond for an hour. When she finally did, her message was a single sentence. Don't share this with anyone else. No explanation. No follow-up. Around the same time, another oddity popped up. A set of radio telescopes in Australia briefly recorded a directional spike, a narrowband burst pointed precisely toward the region where 3I Atlas was passing. The observatory published the chart online. 2 hours later, it disappeared. Their account posted a correction: instrument interference. But the thing is, interference rarely creates narrowband directional bursts. Someone in the comments section, before the comments vanished, said the spike resembled a handshake signal. Like the beginning of a two-way exchange. I don't know enough about radio protocols to confirm that. But the idea stuck in my mind. Because 15 minutes after that spike, we got another anomaly. An electromagnetic dip near the comet. A sharp, sudden drop. It lasted only a second, but the reading was so unusual that 3 observatories marked it as requires further investigation. Later, all 3 retracted the label. When I contacted a friend at one of those observatories, he didn't deny the dip happened. But he did say this: "We're not supposed to talk about it. Not supposed to talk about it." That's becoming a theme. As the days passed, more inconsistencies showed up. The comet's reflected light pattern shifted again. The flicker frequency increased by a tiny margin. Someone claimed to observe thermal signatures inside the nucleus, warm spots, where no warmth should logically exist. A few independent researchers proposed that 3I Atlas might be undergoing fragmentation. But if that were true, we'd see debris, dust clouds, or at least some evidence of structural collapse. We haven't. Not a single fragment. Not a single piece of debris. Instead, the nucleus looks smoother. Too smooth. Like something is forming or being revealed. One night, while I was alone reviewing archived footage, I paused on a frame from 2 days earlier. For a fraction of a second, just as the comet rotated, a dark shape appeared on its surface. Not a shadow, something embedded. Angular. With edges. I tried enhancing the frame. The image pixelated. I tried again. The file locked. I reopened the sequence, and the frame was gone. Removed. Erased. But the timestamp remained. Someone removed only that frame. That was the moment I realized the pattern. Everything strange involving 3I Atlas, every anomaly, every odd reading, every inconsistency, is being quietly cleaned up. Not debated. Not corrected. Removed. And yet, despite all this effort to hide the truth, the comet keeps behaving in ways no natural object should. It flickers. It pulses. It adjusts. It responds. Some researchers think it's hollow. Some suspect it's emitting structured signals. Some propose it's scanning something. Scanning us. Whether any of that is true, I can't say for sure. But I know this. The closer 3I Atlas gets, the stranger everything becomes. And we still have no explanation. At least, none that anyone is willing to share. I didn't plan to end up alone in the control room that night. But sometimes stories don't care what you planned. The place felt hollow the second I stepped inside, like the air had been drained out hours earlier and forgotten to be put back. The monitors still glowed, the projector hummed, but something was wrong. Everything looked the same, and still completely off. It's hard to explain. Like walking into your own house and realizing someone's been there, even if nothing is missing. What bothered me most wasn't the silence, I'd gotten used to that. It was the uniformity of it. Silence normally has little variations, a relay clicking, a cooling fan rattling for half a second, a cable buzzing once in a while. Not here. Here it was like the entire room had agreed to hold its breath. And I swear, the building itself felt colder. I sat down, turned on the energy logs, and froze. Something had spiked, sharply, around 2:17 a.m. A massive draw of power from one of the experimental receivers. No warning. No explanation. No automatic shutdown. It shouldn't have been possible without manual override. And guess what? No record of any override. Some people would say it's just a glitch. But glitches don't erase timestamped commands. They don't neatly remove only the logs connected to a specific event. There's a theory, unconfirmed, naturally, that certain electromagnetic bursts can wipe out system entries without touching anything else. But the signature for that kind of interference should have been all over the sensors. It wasn't. What I did find, though, was something else. For about 40 seconds during the power spike, the telescope's main guidance system captured a string of raw coordinates. They weren't properly formatted, and half of them made no sense geographically, but the sequence lined up in a repeating rhythm, as if something external was pinging us. Almost like a reply. I didn't say that out loud, of course. You don't tell people things like that at 3 in the morning unless you want to get escorted out by security or prescribed a long vacation. Still, the timing was uncanny. The same night the brightness variation in 3I Atlas hit that peak. The same night the southern sky radar caught the strange reflection. And now, an unexplainable handshake of coordinates. I tried converting them into sky positions. Some landed near known stars. Some pointed at empty space. A few didn't correspond to anything, not even imaginary constructs. There's a belief floating among a handful of data analysts, the ones who talk in quiet corners and lock their phone cameras with tape, that these kinds of irregular coordinate bursts aren't random. Some think they're part of a pattern we're just not ready to decode. Others argue it's simply equipment being pushed beyond its limits. Then there's a third group. You don't hear much from them unless you know who to ask. They say sometimes these bursts don't originate from our machines at all. I'll leave it at that. While digging deeper, I noticed something odd. 2 of the facility's backup servers had rebooted at the exact moment the energy spike hit. Perfect synchronization, even though they weren't designed to sync that way. After the reboot, half their short-term memory buffers were blank. Not corrupted, intentionally wiped. I looked for routine maintenance logs. Nothing. I checked security access. Empty. I pulled up the badge scans for that wing of the building and suddenly realized why the room felt unfamiliar. For nearly 3 hours, nobody had been recorded entering or leaving. The facility doesn't miss badge scans. Not without help. There's a rumor, again, nothing officially acknowledged, that the system has a hidden mode meant to cloak certain internal movements. A restricted setting used when high-clearance personnel want to move without leaving a trail on the standard logs. I'm not saying it was activated that night. I'm saying the gaps matched the exact signature of when it has been activated in the past. You can draw your own conclusions. The longer I stayed in that room, the more the silence felt like pressure. The monitors buzzed softly, but behind that, something else pulsed. A low vibration. Just barely noticeable. I pressed my hand against the metal panel under the desk, and the tremor traveled through my fingertips. It wasn't the building settling. It wasn't machinery. It felt rhythmic, deliberate, like a heartbeat. I don't expect anyone to believe that without hearing it themselves. But I know what I felt. Around 3:10 a.m., the vibration stopped. Not gradually, instantly. As if someone flipped a switch. The system pinged. A new data package came in. It was tiny, a sliver of information, but it contained updated readings on 3i Atlas. According to the numbers, the dust coma had shifted shape again. The asymmetry was growing. The tail was bending in a direction that didn't match the expected solar wind patterns. Even the density readings were slightly off the charts. Nothing in the model could explain it. A few researchers I trust, the kind who prefer to stay off official mailing lists, believe the comet's surface activity isn't behaving like sublimation at all. They think something beneath the crust is influencing the outgassing. Something cycling. Something patterned. You're overthinking it, someone else told me once. Comets do weird stuff. End of story. Maybe. But this one is behaving like weirdness with intention. Before leaving, I glanced at the external camera feed out of habit. 3 of the cameras were offline. Not malfunctioning, manually disabled. I know the difference. And so does anyone who's worked with these systems longer than a month. The feed that remained active showed the service platform outside. For a split second, and I still question whether I imagined it, the shadows looked wrong. Like something had been standing there just before the camera refreshed. A trick of the light, most likely. But it didn't feel like a trick. I shut everything down and walked out, pretending nothing had happened. The hallways were warmer, brighter, and full of the regular hum of electronics. Almost like the entire building had woken back up. And yet, as I stepped outside into the cold night air, I had one thought I couldn't shake. If something else was in that room before me. It left right before I arrived. Whether that's coincidence or not. I'll let you decide. I wasn't supposed to see the map. It wasn't even labeled as a map, just a compressed packet tucked inside a folder that shouldn't have been accessible from my terminal. Maybe someone forgot to lock it down. Maybe someone wanted me to see it. Hard to say. In places like this, accidents don't really happen. At least not the kind that leave digital breadcrumbs. The file name was meaningless, a string of numbers that could have been anything from a checksum to a joke. But when I opened it, the screen filled with a star chart, crude, incomplete, and stitched together from at least 4 different sky surveys. Whoever built it had cross-referenced data sets from sources that never collaborate officially. That alone told me something was off. But what froze me wasn't the map itself. It was the overlay. A thin blue vector, almost transparent, ran across the frame. Not a trajectory I recognized. Not a standard orbital projection. It looked more like an approach path. Not toward Earth exactly, but near enough to make the distinction feel technical rather than reassuring. I zoomed in. The vector pulsated slightly, as if updating in real time. Meaning the map wasn't static. Meaning the system was still receiving fresh inputs. My first thought was that someone was tracking three-eyed Atlas with a model I hadn't seen before, a model more detailed than anything on the public servers. But then I noticed something else. The vector didn't end at the comet. It began at it. A few researchers, off record, obviously, have whispered for weeks that the motion of three-eyed Atlas doesn't behave like a passive object drifting through the solar system. There's an internal consistency to its acceleration changes. A pulse, almost. Like something guiding bursts of activity from within. I'm not saying that's true. I'm saying the overlay on that map looked like a projected path originating from the comet. What that means, I have no idea. Or maybe I do, but I'd rather not say it outright. When I leaned back, trying to process what I was seeing, a notification popped up, remote session connected. Someone else had accessed the same map at the exact moment I opened it. I didn't move. Didn't touch the keyboard. Just watched. The cursor on the screen drifted, not mine, and zoomed out to display the full chart. Then parts of the map vanished one by one. Not deleted, scrubbed. Like someone was erasing the sensitive pieces before I could memorize them. I closed the window before I got flagged. Maybe too late. Maybe just in time. There's a belief inside facilities like ours, the kind no one writes down, that sometimes the system behaves like it has a mind of its own. Like it protects certain files more aggressively than others. But everyone knows that's not how software works. Unless the software isn't the part making the decisions. That evening, I decided to check on a colleague who usually works the late shift in data analysis, a guy named Harris. He's one of those scientists who never says more than necessary but always seems to know more than he's willing to admit. When I reached his workspace, the lights were off. His monitor was dark. His chair was pushed too neatly under the desk. If you know Harris, you know he never pushes his chair in. I thought maybe he left early. Then I noticed his badge still hanging on the hook next to the door. People don't leave the facility without their badges. Not unless they're escorted by someone with higher clearance, someone who overrides the need for a badge altogether. There's a rumor floating around, mostly spread by technicians who've worked here long enough to tell when the building feels wrong, that sometimes staff disappear for a few hours and come back with no memory of leaving. They call it the blank walk. Officially, it doesn't exist. Unofficially, I've heard too many stories to dismiss it. Harris didn't return that night. The next morning he walked in like nothing happened. Same coffee. Same tired eyes. But when I asked about the shift, his expression changed. What shift? He said. He claimed he hadn't come in at all. Said he'd been home, asleep, the whole night. 3 other people later confirmed they saw him inside. He denied everything. Make of that what you will. Later that day, the facility received a restricted bulletin. Most staff didn't get it, only those on specific distribution lists. I shouldn't have been one of them, but it showed up in my inbox anyway. The bulletin didn't mention 3i Atlas by name, but it referenced anomalous inbound activity and non-gravitational behavior inconsistent with current profiles. The directive at the bottom was simple. Archive all local copies. Do not generate new trajectory models. Wait for updated parameters. No explanation. No signatures. Just the directive. A few hours later, the bulletin disappeared from every inbox. I checked my backups, the file had been pulled from those too. Digital footprints, gone. Just like Harris. For the rest of the day, security presence doubled. Not overtly, they're too careful for that. But you can feel it when the air changes. When people you've worked with for years suddenly walk straighter. When conversations get shorter. When eyes linger too long on your screen. Around sunset, I stepped outside to clear my head. The sky had that washed-out orange color that makes everything feel unreal. I looked up, half out of habit, half out of worry. And there it was. 3i Atlas, faint, barely visible without equipment, flickered. Not like a star. Not like a plane. More like a signal. There's a theory, again, unproven, that some comets develop surface instabilities that reflect sunlight in strange rhythmic patterns. But the timing of the flicker matched something I'd seen before, the pulsing signature in the coordinate bursts from Part 4. Coincidence? Maybe. But coincidences are starting to pile up. As I watched, a sharp chill ran down my spine. Not fear, recognition. Like everything that had happened these past days was converging into a single point I wasn't ready to face. I don't know if the comet is changing course. I don't know if someone is hiding more than we suspect. I don't know what the map was really tracking. But I do know this. Whatever's coming next. It feels closer than anyone wants to admit. I didn't sleep the night after I saw the flicker. Not out of fear, I've lived with fear long enough to get used to its voice, but because something in me felt like it was shifting, aligning with a truth I didn't fully understand. Around 4:30 a.m., I gave up on trying to rest and drove back to the facility. The roads were empty. The sky was unusually dark, that kind of deep, heavy darkness that feels deliberate, like the stars had dimmed themselves on purpose. When I reached the front gate, there were no guards. Not the usual guy in the booth, not the two rotating patrol officers. Just an open gate and a motionless camera pointed straight at me. Strange, but not the strangest thing I'd seen lately. Inside, the building felt alive again, buzzing with lights, humming with equipment, as if whatever had gone silent 2 nights earlier had returned with reinforcements. But something was different. It took me a minute to realize what it was. Every hallway door was propped open. We don't do that. Ever. It violates half a dozen protocols, not to mention basic security logic. Open doors mean open movement. Open movement means someone wanted everyone, or something, to have access to anywhere it wanted. I walked to the main research hall and stopped cold. The central table, usually covered with papers, coffee cups, laptops, was spotless. In the middle sat a single device, a small, rectangular drive, unmarked except for a faint scratch on its side. The kind of scratch you'd get from hurried hands, not careful ones. I didn't touch it at first. Just stared at it, feeling the weight of the room press against my shoulders. Then the overhead lights flickered, once, twice, and everything inside me said, "Take it. Now." So I did. The moment I plugged the drive into my workstation, the screen flashed and a new window popped up. No login prompt. No authorization check. Just a single phrase. Do not share. Do not copy. Below it, a data stream began loading, slowly at first, then accelerating until the numbers blurred into a continuous flow. It wasn't a video. It wasn't telemetry. It was a sequence, structured, rhythmic, repeating at varying intervals. Almost like a heartbeat translated into digital form. Then the stream stopped. A still image appeared. It took me a few seconds to understand what I was looking at. A shape. Not a perfect outline, not something you'd put in a textbook, but a silhouette, bright on the edges, darker in the center, surrounded by a halo of particulate scatter. The dust coma of 3i Atlas. But not how it looked through telescopes. This was different. This came from much closer. Too close. The dust wasn't just reflecting sunlight. It was bending it, curving the light inwards, toward the nucleus, instead of away from it. That shouldn't happen. There's no known mechanism for that. Not natural, anyway. I zoomed in on the center of the image. The darkness there wasn't empty. It had texture, pattern, a geometry that felt almost mechanical. Even now I hesitate saying that word. Because once you allow your mind to consider it, even hypothetically, the entire framework of what a comet is supposed to be begins to fall apart. Someone had enhanced the image enough to show faint lines running along the structure. Not cracks. Not fault lines. More like seams. And right where the seams converged, a faint glow. Not bright. Not obvious. But rhythmic. Matching the coordinate pulses. Matching the brightness variation. Matching the strange energy signatures. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's all just coincidence. But the human mind doesn't like coincidences that repeat with mathematical precision. A few unofficial researchers, the ones who usually avoid public discussion boards, have floated the idea that some interstellar objects aren't entirely inert. Not alive in the biological sense. Not machines in the human sense. Something in between, or something entirely different. A system. A vessel. A probe. Pick a word, none of them feel right. As I sat there trying to make sense of what I was seeing, the lights in the hall dimmed. Not flickered. Dimmed. Smoothly. Gradually. Like someone was adjusting a dial. A low vibration hummed through the walls, the same rhythm I felt during the power spike in Part 4, only clearer now. Stronger. Almost like the building itself was answering a call from something much farther away. And then the speakers. The ones we never use. Crackled to life. A tone played. Soft, almost musical. Repeating at the same rhythm as the pulses. I froze. Not because of the sound, but because of the realization that hit me. This wasn't interference. This wasn't noise. This was synchronization. The tone repeated 6 times. Then the speakers went dead. A moment later, the overhead intercom activated, a voice I didn't recognize, flat and emotionless. All staff remain in your sectors. Do not attempt external communication. Doors slammed shut across the hallways. Automatic locks engaged. For a moment, I thought the power grid was about to fail, but the light stabilized again. I tried disconnecting the drive. It wouldn't eject. Every command returned an error I'd never seen before. Process not complete. Process? What process? Before I could try again, the image on the screen began to shift. Not update, shift. As if the dust around the comet was moving in real time, rearranging itself into a clearer outline. The nucleus brightened for a fraction of a second. A flash. Barely visible. But enough to reveal a shape beneath the dust. A smooth, curved surface. Not jagged like ice. Not irregular like rock. Constructed. Or something that behaves like construction. My breath caught in my throat. The screen went black. A final message appeared. Connection lost. Stand by for updated parameters. Updated parameters from what? From whom? No one answered. No one even admitted the message existed. For the rest of the day, the facility operated like nothing had happened. People walked the halls. Computers hummed. Sensors scanned the sky. And yet, every now and then, I'd catch someone staring too long at their monitor, their face pale, their posture tense, like they'd seen something they weren't supposed to see. The drive disappeared from my desk by evening. No explanation. No label. No trace it was ever there. And the comet? It's still out there. Still approaching. Still flashing those subtle, silent patterns that don't fit anything we understand. I can't tell you what 3-eyed Atlas really is. I can't tell you if it's natural, artificial, or something in a category we haven't invented yet. All I know is this. Too many systems are reacting. Too many people are staying quiet. Too many coincidences line up too cleanly. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's everything. And whether this whole story is just a chain of strange events, or the beginning of something we're not ready to name, well, that part isn't up to me. You'll have to decide that yourself.